I think those movies have probably the best legs of any movies I've ever seen. They look as fresh and new every time I see them.
It's incredible to believe that Star Wars is almost 20 years old and
Wow.
the other movies a little less old, but they really hold up well.
They do. Steve Sansweet, welcome back to QVC.
Pleasure to be here, Steve.
Stephen is an author of some of the best-selling Star Wars books around. He's also one of the most noted collectors of Star Wars memorabilia on the face of the planet. You even have like original uniforms and all sorts of things.
Oh, all that good junk down in my basement. Absolutely. It's fun. It's fun.
Welcome, Masters and Padawans, to episode 592 of Full of Sith. It's me, Bryan Young, and with me, as ever, the wonderful Holly Frey.
Hi, Bryan. How are you?
I am wonderful.
All things wonderful here on
It's
Full of Sith.
The wonderful world of Full of Sith.
It's harder to say than it sounds.
Yeah, I don't know how Disney did it for all those years.
Moi non plus.
I don't know. I've had the wonderful world of Disney stuck in my head since I went to the Disney Family Museum a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I was there just last week. There's also the It's a Wonderful World of Color, which shows just how much of a singer I'm not, but you know, the World of Color light show spectacular.
Yeah, I kind of avoid all of those shows at the parks like the plague.
Yeah, I love some of them. I don't usually like the crowd situation.
That's why I avoid them like the plague.
Yeah, but I like the shows themselves.
It's the best time to go to Oga's.
Yes, that's true.
No, seriously, I went with a friend who just fireworks are really triggering for her. So
Yeah.
we went over to Oga's and we are like, our guess was that this is probably the best place in the park with the music and everything to not have to hear fireworks going off.
Yeah.
We don't have a reservation or anything, but like if we showed up, do you think we'd be able to weather that storm in here? And they're like, we got you.
Nice.
And yeah, couldn't even tell they were going off.
Love it. Love it. Because you're busy getting yelled at by Yoga.
And Rex's music and everything. Yeah, it was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
They take care of you.
They do. They do. For a place that's run by such a grouchy person.
Yeah.
Staff is pretty delightful.
Always. Yeah, you know, you go into Oga's and you have friends everywhere.
It's true. It's true. I have friends everywhere.
I think that's my favorite thing about Star Wars is I have friends everywhere.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
I really like that that's become sort of a thing.
Me too.
I liked seeing how many signs that all the protests around the country had "I have friends everywhere" on them.
Oh, me too. It was so good.
Which really made me feel good about Andor striking a chord, the right chord that it did when it did.
Yeah, I wonder if Tony Gilroy ever envisioned how much of a galvanizer it would be in that regard.
It would be hard to guess, right? Because they were writing that, you know, during the pandemic.
Years ago. Yeah.
You know, like they were writing that at the height of the Biden administration. Everything seemed to be going pretty well. There was no chance we'd ever have another Trump administration. You know, like all of the problems that we have today that we're sort of living through, it feels like you almost couldn't have guessed. And for them to have come out, for that show to have come out right when it did, right as all of those things started repeating, it doesn't feel like he couldn't have timed it better, but there was nothing he could have done to predict it.
Right. Yeah.
That's just what authoritarian weirdos do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But that's not what we're here to talk about per se.
Right. Star Wars, which sometimes features authoritarian weirdos.
Um, yeah, no, so you had a very eventful trip this last week. I want to hear
I
about.
did. I did. Yeah, we were in San Francisco for 5 days, 6 days. I guess it was 6 days. And we went to the Rancho Obi-Wan fundraiser, which was also on Steve's birthday, so it was magical. And then we went to I had won at a previous Rancho Obi-Wan fundraiser an auction for a visit to Summit at Skywalker Ranch, which is where the vineyard is, for a wine tasting. And then I also saw Elvis Costello while I was out there and went to the Disney Family Museum, but those are less related to Star Wars.
We should get Elvis Costello. We should campaign for Elvis Costello to do some diegetic music in Star Wars somehow.
Gosh, I would explode. I know his kids, when they were younger, his twin boys, were very into Star Wars because he tells the story in his autobiography about his kids having a Star Wars birthday party and somebody coming to the door and him opening the door and like it being this weird thing where he's like, I'm just picturing the stories of them saying how they went to this pop star's door and he opened it and the house was dark, but there were a bunch of kids waving lightsabers around. And so it would be pretty great, in my opinion, to have Elvis Costello diegetic music.
I
But
mean, can you imagine like Elvis Costello in the modal nodes instead of the attractions and him doing some weird Huttese version of Veronica or something?
I mean, I can, and actually, it's been kind of funny in recent years because I see him a lot as often as I
Yeah, I
can.
know.
Um,
I'm so jealous.
I'm sorry, I'm often like I can't record this week. I'm gonna run to London and see Elvis Costello. It happens, but he has not this latest tour, but a couple years back, like we saw him in Iceland, and some friends of ours from London came over, and they knew Elvis Costello, but they weren't like huge fans, and they were not ready for it to not really be Elvis plays the hits, but instead be Elvis Costello is going to do these weird deconstructed versions of his songs that involve like 5 minute theremin solo. I'm like, he likes to experiment sometimes, and I'm like, ooh, some of that stuff actually could become Star Wars diegetic music with very little effort. Um, but yeah, coming out of that, they were like, that was not maybe the best entree for someone that's never seen him live before. I was like, I that would agree with that, yes. But it was great for me because I've seen him hundreds of times.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
I would love to see Elvis Costello in Star Wars somehow.
oh, it would be amazing, amazing, amazing. But the more pertinent issues here to today's discussion are my visit to Rancho and my
Yeah,
visit to Summit, which was really incredible.
I really, really, really wanted to get to Steve's 80th birthday. Steve is just such a terrific guy, and I just couldn't swing it this time. I'm just so underwater with work and
mm,
um which is a good thing. I couldn't make it and I
Sometimes the
feel
schedule will not
awful
play
about it.
nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the schedule did not play nice.
Yeah, it was a really beautiful evening. It was extra fun because we brought some friends with us that had never been to Rancho Obi-Wan. And so to see them experience it and just kind of lose their minds was really, really spectacular. A lot of it was about the Saga Museum plan, which we can talk about a little more. We've talked about it some on the show with Steve and Ann, but it's continuing, like that plan continues to develop. And it was funny because I was talking to Steve and I was like, the first time I interviewed you was 10 years ago, and I asked you then what your plan was long term for the collection. And now it's really amazing to see like where you're at in that process and having developed something. Because he even joked that evening that, he used to always tell people when they asked him what was going to happen was that when he died, he wanted to be put in the middle of it and have the whole thing imploded. And he was like, but obviously that's not really what I want. And I certainly not what I want now. And so to refresh anybody that doesn't recall, he is combining or the plan is for him to combine his collection with several other very prolific and high-end collectors to create a museum, an actual museum space called the Saga Museum. And that won't be at the ranch anymore. It won't be at Rancho Obi-Wan. It'll be in its own dedicated bespoke building made for it. So it's a huge endeavor. Financially, it's a lot to raise money for. And I know they have talked to a number of cities. I don't know which ones. He hasn't shared those to the best of my knowledge with anyone outside of the organization. And some cities have had discussions with him and with Rancho. But we don't know where that's at. So we don't know where it will be. It's kind of like where the best fit will be. But there was just a lot of joy and excitement that night in talking about the day we all get to walk into the Saga Museum and see all of this stuff collected together and how unique it is to have a space like that is a fan museum, not a Lucasfilm or a Disney thing, but like something made by fans. So it's pretty cool. It's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really excited for that. And I hope a city plays nice with them, unlike they did for Lucas and his museum,
Oh man.
which I think seeing all of the stuff that Lucas has been doing for his museum, which I am dying to go to, and it opens
Mhm.
next year. Um, I think all of the cities that turned him down are kicking themselves looking at how much work he's done to improve the area around it.
They have to be. Well, especially because in Chicago, a lobbyist group called Friends of the Park got involved, and their whole thing was that putting a museum on the proposed space where it would have gone would like mar the sightlines of the city and obstruct the view of the water. And now, of course, all of the layout plans we've seen are like, and look at the huge park space that's attached to it. And it's like, I, listen, when George Lucas comes to you with an idea, don't say no. Just don't say no.
Yeah, I mean, even if it's Howard the Duck, it's going to be an interesting flop.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'm sure all of those cities are uh realizing that they played themselves.
Yeah, I hope they hate themselves for it.
This also though is, it's an exciting aspect that we haven't really talked about, I don't think, of Celebration 2027 is going to be right there in LA. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for people to go visit the museum, presuming it opens on schedule, and see this amazing thing that George is putting together. I'm so excited for the whole thing. I feel like I'm going to be in LA more than ever now.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that was part of the plan of putting Celebration there when they did
Yeah,
it.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Um, because of the museum, because of the 50th anniversary of Star Wars. The 10th anniversary of Star Wars was held in LA.
Yeah.
There will be undoubtedly, I can't imagine the Academy Museum doing Star Wars retrospectives for its 50th. There's going to be so much to do. Like, people are going to want to spend weeks out there
Yeah.
doing all of the stuff um, for Star Wars and its 50th for celebration in Los Angeles. And I'm really excited. One of the coolest things I did when I was out in Anaheim for the last celebration, which is not Star Wars related, but I think everybody should put on their list anyway, is to go take the hike out to the shooting sites for MASH.
Oh yeah.
It was just so cool. But I'm a MASH nerd, so anyway,
That's a good show.
it was.
Um, yeah, and
But
then
they
we
they filmed all the Planet of the Apes out there, so maybe that's closer to Star Wars for some people's
I
interest.
mean, it's all good stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff to do in LA and a lot of really cool film related stuff, of course. Um, yeah, so that was really, really lovely. It was a great night. We got there, they had some wine tasting, which we didn't do any of because we knew we were going to have a whole day of it in a couple days. And then, there was lovely cake. There were hors d'oeuvres, but it was really just like the most fun. They had a photo booth that did these hilarious like overlay style photos that were very, very cute. We did not end up doing it. We forgot, and then it was after the fact. We were like, uh-oh. They had an auction. I did not win the one thing I went after in the auction, which
what
was
was it you went after?
a tiny piece of the fabric from Padme's picnic dress,
Oh,
which would not have been for me, but for my best friend, because that's like her, the costume she loves the most. Um, but everybody wanted that thing. So even though I bought a bunch of tickets for that particular box for the drawing, I did not win. But I hope it went to a home full of love. It was one of the few things that whoever won it wasn't there when they pulled the tickets, so I don't know who got it. Or they laid low because they knew I might roll them in the parking lot. But yeah, it was just a great night. I have no idea how much money they raised. I hope a ton, because every step closer to getting the Saga Museum funded is a step closer to another cool space where we can all come together and enjoy Star Wars.
it's true. Any other highlights from the evening? Like, I know one of the cool things about fundraisers past at the museum is kind of getting a little bit of a different view and a different run of the museum. Like, was there anything else you got to? I mean, that was my favorite thing about the last time I went to one of those fundraisers was just kind of getting a little bit of more of an ability to roam the museum. Was there anything you caught sight of there that you hadn't noticed before
Um,
that caught your eye?
there always are. I will say I did not spend as much time in the museum as I would have liked. Um, in part because, we walked through it initially and then like I said, our friends that were with us were losing their minds a little bit. And so I was trying to get pictures of them in it and, make sure they got all their stuff. But then we went outside to eat and for the raffle, and then the museum closed pretty early for additional walkthroughs. So we only got to walk through once, but they had some really beautiful pieces of art. I shared some of them online, but like one is there's a BB-8 and a Lola that have been carved in like the Polynesian indigenous style carving, which are absolutely mind blowing. There is a Royal Guard helmet that they have on display there that is beaded and decorated in, I think it is a Mexican style of workmanship that is like this incredibly beautiful, mind-blowing indigenous motifs that are echoed through the whole thing. It looks honestly like a piece of art from like the 14th century. It's so stupendously beautiful. And I loved it, loved it, loved it. I of course got to see Concetta, which was amazing, and we love her desperately. Um, and there was like a cabinet full, and I'm sure it's been there in the past, but I didn't focus on it that much. That cabinet full of little pieces of the original Death Star
Hmm.
that are just like, I mean, up close, and I say this with love, they just look like junky little pieces of cardboard and stuff. But you
Yeah.
realize, like, that's what sparked all of our imaginations and made magic and made something we were afraid of. And it's just a testament to movie magic and the fact that stuff like that just gets discarded,
Yeah.
um, which is always heartbreaking. But I'm
It's
trying to think if there's anything else in the collection that I was like, oh, you have one of those.
I kind of felt the same way when I was going through the first time I went to Rancho Obi-Wan and Steve was telling his stories about like he's got those pieces of Qui-Gon that he'd rescued from Qui-Gon's funeral pyre,
Hmm.
where it was just like the wax Qui-Gon and the bits of his costume and stuff, and Steve's like dumpster diving in Qui-Gon's funeral,
Yeah.
like pyre. Um, which sounds like an odd sentence when you say it like that, but is actually totally normal both for Steve and Star Wars. Um, but just yeah, it's just like these are this weird, this fabric and these bits of wax that Steve rescued are part of this really indelible part of Star Wars I love a lot.
Yeah.
Um, and it doesn't look all that great, right? Um,
Yeah, I mean, I think this is also a good point though, right? In terms of like why the Saga Museum is so important, right? We know Lucasfilm has an archive, and it's robust and they keep a lot of stuff, but they cannot keep everything. And so there are things that get tossed. Um, and so here is a place where I don't, we will never have everything from every set ever. That's just not a tenable proposition. But this is another set of those kinds of things that we will have. So it kind of doubles up on like the perpetuation of the legacy, which I really, really like.
Yeah, and I mean, Gus Lopez's collection is one of those things that like I just salivate at.
Yeah.
Um, Seeing the pictures that he posts of his collection is stunning.
Yeah, for sure.
And he doesn't just collect like the the merchandise like Steve does. He's really a big time collector of movie used stuff, or
Yeah,
not even movie used stuff, like the other ephemera. Like he owns the costumes, like he owns a ton of the costumes from the holiday special. So if you've
right.
watched that documentary about the holiday special, they went to his place to look at those original costumes of the dancers that I'm almost positive that they probably consulted with him to go get pictures and looks at those so that they could recreate that for Skeleton Crew.
I would think so. I would think so.
And he has like he collects a lot of those drawings and things like that from not just the movies, which he has a ton of that kind of stuff, but also like all of the ancillary commercials and all of the TV specials and all of the weird random bits around it. And he keeps it in pristine condition on like museum quality mannequins and stuff. And he takes it very seriously, and he's a very serious collector, and he understands what it is to take care of it. And just that's the kind of stuff like I would go to a museum to like see all. I like I If I knew where Gus lived, like I would I would get banned from
You would be a
like I'd get a
stalker.
restraining order.
Yeah.
Like Gus would have a restraining order from me.
Yeah.
um I just want to see it. So him having a museum is a good thing for his collection, because I think he has a lot of stuff that just got tossed, like you said. Like it left the studio and no one expected it to go anywhere, and it ended up in the hands of someone who actually cares about it. And I'm really grateful that somebody like Gus is like, not only have I taken care of it, I'm going to put it somewhere where everybody can appreciate it as much as I have.
Yeah, we didn't talk about the other three collections specifically that are merging with Rancho's collection, but it's Gus Lopez's, Duncan Jenkins's collection. Um, he has so much memorabilia. And then Lisa Stevens and Vic Wertz, their collection. Um, and so like these are seriously like incredible collections of stuff. Um, so I'm excited because imagine we could go look at all of it. Can we touch it? No, probably not. But also the other thing is that because these are people who have, put these things together just on their own with their own money, what's really, really fascinating and amazing to me is that all of them have also been pretty good about conservation, which is not something that like all home collectors manage, right? Like we
Yeah.
all know people that have collected something, whether it's Star Wars toys or whatever, and like those things, yellow over time, or like the plastic that was used to mold them breaks down. But the collections that these people have developed, they have kind of addressed those things, gotten in front of them, already made sure that they have display setups that will minimize that kind of stuff. So it's a really, really, I mean, it's an impressive, impressive thing. I forget what the number was. They were saying how many pieces they collectively had. It was something like 1.7 million or something crazy like that. Um, don't quote me on that. I know it was over a million, and I can't remember where the decimal landed, but spectacular, spectacular.
Yeah. Um, I want to know about Skywalker Ranch. I've been to Skywalker Ranch twice, but it was like once was to drive around it to go to Big Rock, and I got to see Big Rock a little bit when a friend of mine was working on Clone Wars, so I didn't get to see like the ranch proper much. And the
Mhm.
other time was for Rogue One, for the press event, and we got to go into the theater at Skywalker Sound, but it was like at night, so like we couldn't really see the house and whatever. So like going to Skywalker Ranch at some point during the day proper and getting to wander around and do something is like on my bucket list still. But
Yeah, I mean, we were
tell me
over
about
at
Summit.
yeah, Summit is part of Big Rock, right?
Okay.
It's what Big Rock is called now. So Summit is
Oh.
a convention. They have a convention center there, but really we went um back initially to the winery, which is at the very back of the Summit section of the property. So this was actually kind of funny because, you have a specific time that your event will start. And because we were all driving up from the city, we were having to like guess on what time to leave because, traffic can be a little bit dicey and it is a hike. It's like anywhere from like a 30-minute to an hour long drive. And so we just got really lucky that day and we had easy peasy, no traffic. And we got there and you get to the gate and like you have to if you're doing one of these, like everyone in your group has to like provide personal information. You have to sign an NDA. Like there's a lot of hoops you have to jump through so they know you're coming. And they check when you get to the gate,
Yeah.
they ask you who is in the car with you. Like they really do check through the whole list. But it was funny because we got there and we pulled up and I said, "Hi, I'm Holly Fry. I'm here for our 2 o'clock wine tasting." And they were like, can you go away for a little while? Because we were just a little too early and they were like, we are not fully set up. We turned away two other people and I was like, I know who those were. So we, had to run and go get a soda somewhere really quick so that they would have time to set up. But it
Which is funny
was,
because it's like the ranch and that gate is not close to anywhere to get a soda either.
it's really not, no. So I mean, it wasn't like forever, but it definitely ate up the time to drive out to the nearest grocery store and grab a soda. But so we went back and it was worth it to have gone away and come back because then when you get to the gate and they check you in and they just tell you there's not a person at the gate. It's all like there's a camera and they're talking to you and then they tell you where to go. But then when you pull into the winery area, there are literally people there waiting to greet you and it's this absolutely beautiful arrival point. There's some of the most beautiful landscaping I have ever seen in my life there. I really cannot overstate how spectacularly beautiful that property is. I mean, I'm a very lucky person. I have been to wineries in Tuscany. I have been all over France. I have, been to Iceland. This was right up there in terms of just like beautiful scenic views. Because the winery is beautiful, but it has also all of that land has been cared for really carefully. There is a lot of flora and fauna that is natural to the space. Like we almost, thank goodness, I was quick on the brake, but as we were pulling through, we had a deer jump right in front of the car, like a bit like just between a fawn and an adolescent deer, just like bolt out of the bushes. And we saw probably 20 deer while we were there total, because there are a lot of them running around. So it's very idyllic. It's like being in a Disney space, or like a Disney movie. But yeah, so you pull up to the winery. It is absolutely beautiful. It's this beautiful building. I think animation used to work there, but it has been completely redone and it's in this Frank Lloyd Wright style, except it's much taller than a Frank Lloyd Wright building. And like from the second you arrive, they just take care of you the whole time, right? They, um, you know, there are rules. You cannot take any pictures inside, period. Um, but they will take pictures for you of you and your group outside. Like my wine tasting was for 8 people, and so all of us, like they got pictures of all of us with the big statue that's there that has the angel that's the logo of all of the Skywalker Vineyard stuff. And they talk to you about the history of the building, the history of the land, like the it when it was purchased, and when George Lucas acquired it, and what it was before then, and how it had been worked before that, which is all really, really cool. You probably know, of course, there was already no relation, a person named Lucas that
Yeah.
owned a lot of that land and that area. Like when your exit is
Lucas Valley Road.
right, which is not George Lucas at all. It is the
Yeah.
person that was there in the 1800s. So that's just kind of funny. But yeah, and then once you're in the building, like they will point out all of the cool architectural details and everything. And I will say this going in, you know this of me. I have historically not been a wine drinker. I don't really love
Yeah.
wine. Listen, I'm gonna tell you a secret. When I did my bartending school, I might have cheated a little bit on the wine section of the exam because I'm not a wine person. Wine is for floating on cocktails. That's the only thing I use it for. Um, but I really, really enjoyed it, and it was very cool, and I do appreciate learning about all the history of it and how they make it, and I actually did end up enjoying a couple of the wines very much that we tried. Um, but yeah, so they talked about the furniture and the choices that were made. They also mentioned that there's a stained glass inlay in the doors at the front door of the winery, and they were like, "Oh, originally this stained glass was red." And this is so George Lucas, right? Because as we know, he's tweaked his films over the years. After that was installed for a while, he was like, I don't think I like the red. And he had it completely redone with like golden tones. So I'm sure that was an extremely expensive redo. It's absolutely beautiful. There's like a fire going in the main entryway all the time in this beautiful fireplace. What's cool is that, much like at the Lucasfilm offices, they have a lot of George's very rare
Is
international movie poster collection there,
yeah.
including there's a great Italian poster for THX 1138, and I'm trying to remember what the name of it is in Italian, because we had, by good fortune that day, just completely randomly, Lucas Vineyards, Skywalker Vineyards actually has 3 properties. So they have the US property there at Big Rock, and then they have a vineyard in France and a vineyard in Italy. And one of the sommeliers from the vineyard in Italy happened to be there that day, and he co-ran our tour and our tasting, which was incredible. Like to have, I mean, everyone there was wonderful, but it was just really cool to have like an extra expert on hand to talk through stuff. And so, we got to see, really what's very cool is the sustainability initiative of that vineyard, because everything, like their goal, and I think for all of their wines now, I could be misspeaking, but I'm pretty sure, um beginning to end, they are made entirely there. um at most vineyards, right, they would get their, like, uh wine is not made in like one fermentation process and then you're done. I won't go into the boring stuff of that. I do remember this part of my bartending school. But like a lot of places will, acquire like the base for their fermentation from somewhere else, or like they'll grow the grapes but then they'll send it off to be fermented somewhere else. Or sometimes they're aged in a different place, or they'll age at that vineyard but they'll come in from elsewhere, or then they'll be sent off for bottling, labeling, etc. All of those steps happen there at Summit. So like soup to nuts, the grapes are grown, they're picked there, they are fermented there. It goes through its, aging process there. It is bottled there. The labels go on there. Hank, who was one of the gentlemen that was giving our tour, was saying, "Oh yeah, I have sat here and put labels on bottles, and like they have a particularly bespoke, beautiful, their like high-end range has this like a 3D version of their logo that goes on the bottle, and he's like, we sit here and put these on, like this is all done right here in house, which is a really amazing thing. And in terms of sustainability, they're not increasing their footprint in terms of um, using up the resources of the planet by sending things around. They just do it all right there, which is pretty great. It really was a mix of history, Star Wars information, and tasting. There isn't a lot of Star Wars stuff there, but they talk about, points in the process when Star Wars was being made and things that were happening there at the winery. And they do talk through a lot of the posters that are there, which are amazing. Um, and then, we tasted four different wines in different places. One was like right in the entryway. Another was in what they call their library, which is where they have a bottle of all of their 18 current wines. I think it's 18. Um, and then there are two that you have at the end of the tasting where you're actually seated at like a little bar setup where they also have, little plates of meat and cheese and nuts and whatnot for you. And it was just the most spectacular way to spend an afternoon. And then of course they took us to the main summit building, which is also a convention center now. And so we could shop in the store, and things got very out of hand very quickly for Holly Fry. But that's okay.
Um,
A lot of things being shipped to me now, and my credit card is now on file.
yeah. Um, so one of the let me ask you this though, because I'm curious. So at Big Rock, when it was Big Rock and Lucasfilm Animation was there was that big room that overlooked like the lake back there.
Hmm.
And there was this poster, I want to say it was either French or Italian for Alfred Hitchcock's Notorious that was just the best.
I think it is still there. The reason why I say I think, I know I saw that poster this past week, and I don't remember where I saw it
Well, it's I mean if
because I was
you're
also at Lucasfilm briefly.
yeah, if you ever go to Lucasfilm or any like George Lucas tangentially George Lucas owned property or associated with him, there are just foreign movie posters everywhere.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um that's just how it is.
Yes, safe to say some of those will be at the museum when it opens.
Yeah. Well,
Because
which
his
is
collection is apparently massive.
yeah, when people it's funny when I don't know, I'm really excited to see his collection because apparently he has like the world's largest collection of like Norman Rockwell's too, like original.
Yeah,
And that's going to be at the at the
yeah.
museum. Um like just as someone who's interested in the art of movie posters, especially foreign movie posters which we don't get a lot of
Oh,
access
so
to,
good.
like I love the Lucasfilm tour for all of the film history that it has as far as like the actual objects
Yeah,
that ILM created that you can see, but I would almost just as much love a tour for them to do of just like the history of foreign movie posters.
yeah.
Um, yeah.
I'm trying to think of anything else that was especially delightful there. Like I said, I did a lot of damage. We bought a lot of stuff. Listen, if you're ever, I'm actually not going to say what I'm about to say because sometimes this thing sells out, and then whenever we go back, we can't get it. We couldn't get it for a minute this weekend, and then we got it somewhere else. I know
Um,
that's super cloak and daggery. Just don't even worry about it.
you can tell me after the show.
I can.
Um, one of the things I actually like a brief detour back into Star Wars and not Star Wars adjacent things, but on the subject of foreign movie posters, those are some of my favorite things is the foreign Star Wars movie
Oh
posters.
yeah. Oh
Um,
yeah.
one of my favorite purchases at Celebration Japan actually was a Japanese t-shirt of one of my favorite um uh movie posters. I think it's the Japanese poster of Return of the Jedi with Darth Vader's helmet sort of exploding.
Yeah.
Um,
It's so good.
yeah, it really is. And then, I mean, just like the Polish movie posters are really good. I think the Empire movie poster for Poland is so good, but it doesn't make any sense. It looks like a piece of like 1940s or 30s like Russian propaganda almost.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't make any sense, and unless you like know what you're looking at, you couldn't tell that it's a Star Wars poster.
Yeah, are you talking about the one where like Yoda is kind of deconstructing in the
No.
foreground?
No. It's like sort of blue and it's sort of like it features a Hoth trooper sort of, but they look like um
Oh, you're talking about the one it's blue and the Hoth
yes.
Trooper is like in red and gold.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And like or it might be Luke and it just says
It's
like
it's hard to know.
it just says Imperium across the top and the 20th Century Fox logo in the bottom left looks like a police badge
Yes.
and there's like a film strip like to it
Like the
but not
pips,
really.
yeah.
Um yeah. And actually, it's not a Japanese poster. The one with Vader's helmet exploding is also Polish. But I guess the Japanese like it. The Japanese posters were also really interesting. Um, they featured R2 and 3PO a lot. Um, they really liked R2 and 3PO in Japan, which was what was
I
so
mean,
so funny about 3PO coming out at Celebration Japan to introduce Filoni.
oh yeah.
That just made me
Um,
smile.
you have just given me an idea that we're going to talk about offline. Um, in any case, uh, yeah, I'm trying to think of what else happened at Skywalker that was worth mentioning other than saying it's so beautiful. I I'm gonna be honest, I don't know how you set one of those up if you haven't if it's not part of a thing. I imagine you just get in touch with it. I don't know. I don't know. But boy, it was
Well,
amazing.
call
I'd do it
Rancho
again.
Obi-Wan and find out how much money you need to throw at them for them to arrange it.
Well, they just like yeah.
I
Yeah, I
mean,
don't know. I mean, they must have them. They do have private wine tastings there all the time.
I know,
I
but
just
like,
don't
I
know how you
really love the
book it
idea of
normally.
people calling up Steve and
Oh
saying, Steve, how
no.
much money, like, how much of a check do I need to write for you to organize this for me? Because
Well, the
Steve,
thing
those
is,
guys obviously have the connections to organize that.
they don't really organize it in terms of like beyond handing you a certificate,
And that's fine.
right? Like you get a certificate and then you have a lot of back and forth with Skywalker about timing and making sure you collect everybody's information for them and um all of that kind of stuff. Which is fine. But I just mean like what Steve would be like, leave me alone. Uh
Hey, if you're writing a check, I don't think that's going to
maybe.
be a problem.
Right, but then like that
Yeah.
would presume that they have donated one, right? Because otherwise that money just goes to Skywalker Vineyards.
I I don't know. Something in my heart tells me that if Steve called up Skywalker Vineyards and said, "Hey, we've got donors who are interested in these. Could you guys donate some more again?" They'd
They
be like,
probably would.
"Sure, Steve."
They probably
And
would.
maybe that's just my
And I will say, amongst our crew of people, they made so much money in that gift shop.
oh
They
yeah.
made so much. They made quota for the year, I swear.
I feel that was the same thing. I visited when I went to Lucasfilm a few weeks ago. I feel like that was the same thing that happened with just me.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, it was funny because they wouldn't even like I made three separate purchases because I had purchased things I was taking with me that day, wines that were being shipped to me, and then other items that were being shipped to me. One of the things that I love there, oh, they make their own jams there on property.
Hmm.
There is like a strawberry Merlot jam. That stuff is the business, and it's great for making old fashions. Like you just dilute it a little bit so it's like a syrup, and you make an old fashioned with it, and that is
Well, Holly,
So
I'm going to
good.
be at your place in less than a month for
Oh
my
my
birthday.
gosh. If only I had some of that en route.
And you know what I like is old fashions.
I know you do. There's another old fashioned I need to test on you, but that's neither here nor there. As an old fashioned drinker, I want to test it on you. Um, yeah, there's a lot of really yummy stuff. I had these three separate transactions, and they never wanted to verbalize the totals on any of them. They were just like, okay, we'll just take your card now. I'm like, all right, Ebru. They're like, we'll email you a receipt. I'm like, that sounds great. Sounds great.
Yeah. So
Um, yes.
the other thing we were going to talk about is Andor
Yeah.
and its big award season push. I think it's interesting that um Andor, I think there was some consternation from some folks that Andor would be out of the cultural conversation because of the way they were releasing it,
Right.
right?
In the four chunks of three.
Yeah, they were like it's not going to be in the cultural conversation because we're going to get four chunks instead of 12 weeks of conversation.
Right.
Um,
They
but
needn't have worried.
yeah, well, I think part of that is because of the political moment we're in. Part
Yeah.
of it is because of how good it is. And part of it is just how well the PR machine has been working at doing screenings and keeping the press going for it and keeping, that the cast and crew have been doing a really great job of staying uh interviewed,
Yeah. Yeah, I
talking
mean
to
they've all
folks.
been really, really. It's like Michael Wilkinson, the costume designer, has been posting about those costumes like every day and really sharing some beautiful up close photographs you would normally never see of these kinds of things.
Yeah. And
If
cynically you can be like, well, they're just bucking for awards. And they are. Um and they need to, right?
Yeah,
Because those awards are sort of like currency for what they do, and it shows to the bean counters that what they do is worth paying for, and they deserve those awards. But I think that there's something else going on, and that they're trying to prove that this sort of storytelling in the science fiction space and the fantasy space um, is worthwhile and as important as the other prestige sort of storytelling formats.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I did get to swing by Lucasfilm briefly on Tuesday. Is that right? This week is really blurry for me. And I got to see the costumes and props that they have on display there currently, which have rotated out. And my understanding is that, those are rotating out because they are being shown at other places as part of this push to get them recognized and potentially part of the for your consideration group. I will say this because I have looked at an awful lot of movie costumes. If this show doesn't get nominated, I might riot. I mean, this
I
is
mean,
in no way to cast any kind of shade on anyone else's whose work I've seen up close. Like this was kind of the case too with a lot of prequel pieces that they were not just costumes. They were couture level garments that were like regular wear. Like a lot of times when you have a costume piece that is made for film, especially when it's something that's not going to be seen for a prolonged period of time or doesn't see a lot of action, um, you take some shortcuts, right? Like, if you see someone in a three-piece suit, what it might actually be instead of like a shirt and a vest and a jacket and a pant is like the shirt and vest may actually be one garment that's like a little simpler to put on. Not always, but sometimes things like that happen. Or you can use materials that are not the kinds of materials, and by that I mean not even just fabrics, but things like, beading, rhinestones, etc., that are things that show well on screen, but wouldn't necessarily hold up to scrutiny in the real world. That is not the case with anything from Andor. Um, I spent so much time while we were there. One of the costumes on display was Krennic's, and gazing at his cape because it is so beautifully constructed. Like it is the seaming on it that creates the shape of it. Because I think if you have never made garments or you don't know how they work, it's easy to think that a cape is just a piece of fabric that is, attached at the shoulders or whatever. But in fact, it's got a lot of shaping and seaming. And those kinds of seams are very hard to do because they tend to be very long. They tend to sit on the bias, which is hard to keep from stretching while you sew. Like there are some challenges. And these are the most beautiful flat felled seams that are triple stitched that look absolutely gorgeous. Like they're just spectacular. And we also saw Cassian's the outfit that he wears. I want to make sure I'm not misremembering. I'm looking at my pictures. The outfit that he wears when he is um grabbing Mon Mothma. And then we also had one of Luthen Rael's costumes. Listen.
Yeah, those are the ones that were on display when I was there too. They were
Yeah. Yeah, because Mon Mothma
gorgeous.
has moved on to some other stuff. Um, and I will say, like, there is some detailing in the way that Luthen's suits are put together that is like as good as any bespoke vintage Hugo Boss piece. Like it's so beautiful. Every piece is spectacularly made. Um, these costumes really need to be nominated for a
No,
million
it
awards.
they the level of care and storytelling. This is I'd really love to do an interview with just about every major department head
Yeah,
um you know on Andor to talk about the storytelling that they're putting into each of their crafts because that's what they're doing. They're all putting in storytelling. They're all doing storytelling at every level. Like I don't know if um folks want to go back and listen to that interview I did with the Acolyte costume designer, but the level of storytelling that costume
yeah,
designers do that is almost invisible and you don't notice. But yeah, like you're saying, like you go in and um you look at the costumes and you can see what is actually going into them. Um it's astonishing. And that was when I got to talk to Denise Gao about her playing Dedra Miro and talking about what helped her get into character. She was talking about it was the craft of the costume that actually made her get into the character. It was the costume itself that put her into that character because she couldn't play her posture any other way.
right.
Um, that there's so many different elements playing to the storytelling that you don't even notice. It's just such good stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. One thing I wanted to mention, I think these were probably on display when you were there too. They have Queen Amidala's headdress in the first thing we ever saw her in the what's
Yeah.
lovingly called the ice cream gown sometimes. And they also have the headdress from her travel gown, the that kind of bronze looking
Hmm.
headdress. Those are not from the prequels. Those are remade pieces.
Yeah.
Which is astonishing. Like for all of my Padme girlies who have spent hours and hours poring over those pictures and looking at them, as I have, You almost cannot tell them from the originals. They are so beautifully remade. Um, it's so good. It's so good. I want this show to be nominated for a lot. I really want the design to be nominated. I haven't even talked about props. Like those spiders up close are cool as
Oh
hell.
yeah, the Gorlectopods and
Oh,
like
I love them.
the just all of the props they had on display there at Lucasfilm in Java the Hutt there were really cool. Um,
They're not in Java the Hutt. They're in a different
oh,
place.
they're in a different place now. They were
Well,
at Java the Hutt.
Java the Hutt is not the same thing as that lobby that you're talking about. They're
Oh,
adjacent to one another, but I would not ever say they're in Java the Hutt.
they're adjacent to Java the Hutt.
Right. They're
Um,
they're like they're in the arrivals lobby with one of the gift shops.
yeah. Okay.
Just to be really pedantic about it, but
Thanks, Holly. I needed that. I
I
needed to
only
be
feel like that's important because I don't want anybody to think that they're just displayed like at the coffee shop. They have their own whole beautiful museum setup that then leads into a museum setup that is the timeline of Lucasfilm that's there permanently. That's beautiful, although some of those pieces change. Um, yeah, it's quite lovely. Obsessed, obsessed, obsessed. I
yeah.
could gaze at those costumes all day long. I want to dress like Luthen Rail for the rest of my life. His
Are you
clothes are
planning
so
a Luthen
good.
Rail costume then?
Not specifically. One of my outfits that I did for Star Cruiser the second year was based in part on some of his stuff. Like I had a vest that has that asymmetrical triangular closure, and a pair of velvet trousers that went with it that matched, and like a kind of an overcoaty robe that was based on the cut of his. Because I love that stuff, man. That's the three-piece suit for me. I love a little. There are good clothes in Andor. Aside from how beautiful they are as costumes and how they should be nominated, there are so many pieces that are really, to me, easily translatable into day wear, um, for like regular life that you could have a little secret Star Wars action going on all the time. Highly recommend.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you're into stitching,
I'm not,
but you
but
could be.
I could be.
It's not a secret. That's a learnable skill. People will show you. The internet will show you.
It is. I'm not saying I couldn't learn. I'm saying
It's
uh
not in the cards, kid. Shut up.
I'm just not. I'm kind of like really all thumbs at that sort of stuff. I'm just
Well,
not good at like I could do it and it would be sloppy and I could probably get a little better at it, but like I'd never be great at it.
oh, I don't know. Everybody starts out sloppy. I mean, it's one of those things that's always funny because I'm not a great teacher of sewing because I don't remember not sewing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I started sewing when I was 3 years old. So we're talking about at my current advancing age, more than 50 years. So I don't necessarily always remember when I'm trying to show someone or teach them how to do something. And I did for a while write for fabric.com. Even I had worked there, but then even after I left that job, they retained me as a freelancer to write like their blogs that had sewing instructions. And it's very hard for me to remember like what people don't naturally intuit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the shape of the way something has to work on the inside for you to flip it out the right side and for it to fit the human body. Sometimes that's a struggle for me to remember just because I've been doing it for so long. It's like hardwired in and it's like an involuntary muscle twitch at that point.
That's it. I find the same thing with writing and teaching writing that teaching forces me to sit back and try to evaluate stuff I do automatically in ways that I would have never tried to articulate, right? Like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah,
why
it's
did you do
tricky,
this way? That's a good question. Why did I
right?
do that way?
Let's think this through.
Yeah. Um, and I think that's what's really helped. Um, that's what's really helped me like in doing stuff for Star Wars. Um,
Oh, Star Wars, we love
yeah.
you. Yeah, a lot of it's very, very funny because in general, I will say this in terms of learning a skill like sewing. And which is not to say that people need to learn how to sew. If you're not interested in it, that's fine. But it's very funny as a stitchy monster because people think like, "Oh, you love to sew." And the fact of the matter is, I don't necessarily love to sew. Like, there's a lot of work involved, and sometimes I enjoy getting lost in the work. But the real impetus is always that I want things. You know what I mean? Like, that's really what has always driven me when I was a kid, when I got serious about sewing, it was because I wanted more clothes. And then as an adult, as I got more and more into Star Wars stuff, it was because I wanted Star Wars clothes and specifically like things that were not, yes, costumes, but also things like what I'm talking about, where you just adapt something to be part of your day-to-day wardrobe that's a little Star Warsy in its design and nature. So, it kind of depends on what's driving you to develop a skill sometimes, right? As to how. I bet if you were like, I really want this one shirt, no one will make it for me. I need it in my soul. I don't know if you have those feelings about clothes, but I do. That you would figure it out.
What I would figure out is finding a person I could pay to make it for me. Um,
Which is also perfectly valid, and it's a way to support artists, so that's
it
fine
is
too.
well, and that's really where what it comes down to is because like I know like I have a limited amount of time to spend on those extracurricular activities, and I know that like the time investment of being frustrated trying to figure it out would be greater than the time it would cost for me to do work that I
Right.
find joy loving doing, that would pay me to pay someone who loves doing the work that I would need to do to acquire said shirt or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
um, which I guess is how all of the, how commerce is supposed to work, right?
Yeah. People with special skills get paid by the people who do not have or do not have the time to develop those skills to do those skills,
Hmm.
theoretically. Also, I've been saying this a lot on things. I said this on Stuff You Missed in History class recently. Don't haggle with artists. Their price is their price.
Yeah,
It makes me absolutely bonkers when people want to haggle with an artist because they think you made it, you can make another. And it's like, yeah, but I made this one and I already put time into
yeah,
just one of those things I feel very strongly about. Don't,
yeah.
don't try to haggle down artists. Just pay artists for their worth.
And they're worth more than you think they are. And chances are, when you're haggling with an artist, they've already had so much imposter syndrome, lowering their price because they don't think they're worth what they're really worth anyway, that they've already reduced the price lower than they should have.
Yeah. Yeah, and it hurts all other artists because then it establishes a false market
Yep.
level. And what you're paying for is not, it took you, we'll just say like a literally a physical artist, like that draws. It took you 40 minutes to draw this. Yes, but it took me 15 years to, go to art school to hone my craft to learn how to do this. Like that's their overhead. So that's part of what you're paying for is their expertise and what it has taken to get them to the point where they can churn out that drawing in 40 minutes.
Yeah,
I feel so strongly about paying artists.
me too.
And I feel strongly about paying artists the honor that they deserve, which is why I think Andor should be nominated for a cajillion awards.
Yeah, no, it should be. And I really love the continued churn of their publicity tour, and I hope it never ends.
Me too.
And I hope maybe we can see if we can get some more of those folks on the show. Maybe we can get the costume designer on the show. Who knows?
I will pass out from sheer delight if we do.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know.
Fingers crossed.
Um, where can people find you, Holly?
I am on Blue Sky as Holly Fry, and I'm on Instagram as Surly Girly 5. Listen, it's a lot of raccoon pictures right now. We're in the season. I am also, of course, still making stuff you missed in history class, which is Missed in History on the socials, although truly we don't interact a whole lot with those. So, you know, you just find me on mine if you have a question. Criminalia, still trucking along. We use the hashtag Criminalia for that one. And then yeah, Killer Cocktails is still out in the world if you would like to make some drinks. I don't have any that are made with Skywalker jam, but there is a jam-based whiskey recipe in there. It's made with jalapeno jam. So, you know, if that sounds yummy, get on that. How about you, Brian?
You can find me online at swankmotron.com or any social media generally at swankmotron, mostly Blue Sky these days, sometimes Instagram. Um, I'm going to be uh, July 11th and 12th doing some signings and gaming events in Portland, Oregon. So if you want to go to swankmatron.com and find out uh, the details on those, I'll be in Portland, yeah, doing some signings and playing BattleTech with folks. And then July 18th through the 20th, I think.
You'll be right here in Atlanta.
I'll be in Atlanta with Holly, and her and I are going to be doing a live Full of Sith show, and we'll be hanging out and talking about Star Wars all weekend at the show at Atlanta Comic-Con,
Yes.
which will be really cool. As far as Full of Sith goes, like I said, you can find us at Atlanta Comic-Con, but you can also go to fullofsith.com and listen to the entire back catalog of episodes, almost 700 of them. And you know, be sure to do that. You can send us an email at holocron@fullofsith.com, and we'd love to hear from you and your ideas about the show and what you'd like to hear about. And yeah, be sure to rate and review the show wherever it is you listen to it, and go ahead and tell your friends about us or something. Or not. We're not the boss of you. So unless you think there's anything else, Holly.
No, I just started laughing thinking about how my cat Marva is the boss of me now.
Well, that's what happens when you name someone after someone as strong-willed as Marva Andor.
She's a bossy cat. We picked the right name. But yes, I hope everyone's pets are delightful and bossing them around just the right amount.
So then, for super producer Mike Pilot and for Holly Fry, I'm Bryan Young, and the Force will be with you always.
Sir, if you'll not be needing me, I'll close down for a while.